All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are going to get started. Just wanted to make sure that everybody in person, everybody in Zoom is here, and Alyssa, our illustrious chair, will take it away from here.
All right, thanks, Sean Michael. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Arizona Emergency Medicine Medical Student Council's second annual Meet the Residencies Conference. We are thrilled to have you all here, whether you're joining us in person or virtually. And just a reminder to all those joining us via Zoom, we recommend selecting the speaker view in the top right corner and remaining on mute unless you're actively speaking. My name is Alyssa Goodman, and I am the AZEM MSc Chair for 2022. I'm originally from St. Louis, go Cards, go Blues, and attended undergrad at Mizzou. I was lucky enough to spend 2 years scribing in the emergency department, which is where I fell in love with this amazing specialty, and I'm now an M4 at Creighton. The purpose of this conference is to highlight the incredible residency programs in Arizona and provide students an opportunity to learn more about each program. After we introduce our lovely PDs, APDs that have joined us today, the first 2 hours will be our large group Q&A, and then we will spend the last hour in smaller breakout rooms, followed by lunch, which will be provided to those of you attending in person. But first, I have the distinct honor of introducing Dr. Jeffrey Comp, who has generously agreed to say a few words to lead us off this morning. For those of you who do not already know Dr. Comp, he's the Associate Program Director for Creighton Maricopa. He is fellowship trained in wilderness medicine, has served on EMRA's Executive Board of Directors and Wilderness Medicine Committee, and received the John Sarko Excellence in Teaching Award. We are very thrilled to have him here with us this morning, so I will go ahead and let him take it away.
Excellent, guys. Thank you so much. Can everyone on our virtual experience, can they all hear me?
Yep, sounds great.
Perfect. Okay. All right. That was a really incredible introduction. Thank you so much. My name is Jeff Comp. I work just down the street over at Valleywise Health at the Creighton Emergency Medicine Residency. I'm in charge of all of our wilderness medicine issues. And as you can see, I have a bunch of stickers on my water bottle that is both sensitive and specific for an EM doctor that likes to do outside wilderness medicine. I'm also one of the APDs. I was asked, and I'm very honored to be able to come and talk with you guys a little bit about what we do in emergency medicine. And I'm also going to sort of inflict myself on you guys a little bit more and talk about what you should be doing when you leave here. So just quickly from a show of hands, who are my first year medical students? Fantastic. Who are my second year medical students? Okay. You probably have tests coming up or boards. All right, that sounds good. They're all losing all of their sunlight. Okay. Third year med students. Okay. Any fours? Excellent. Cool. This is great. Okay. So we really span the sort of the gamut of our new learners and our people that have really already decided to make the commitment to emergency medicine. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do in emergency medicine. Sorry, I keep clicking and that's not going to work out well for me. So we should probably start with the definition, right? What do we really do? And you can find a lot of different written things that will say, hey, here's our job description, here's our job title. But I think that what we really do is we see the undifferentiated patient, right? So we take care of the person that comes to us with anything. And we work on risk stratifying to try to rule out a lot of our life threats, right? But this is really what we do. We take care of anyone, anytime, anywhere. And we're the only medical specialty that can do that. A lot of places and a lot of different specialties can do 2 of those. Some of them do 1 of those. But we think about, again, my background, austere and wilderness medicine. There are very few people that will take care of anyone, anytime, with anything. And that's why we're really, really cool, right? For some of us, I don't have to convince us. So we're already past that point. But because of that, we need to know a little bit about a lot of things. Our job is to know the life threats of every single of every single medical specialty. And that's kind of a really, really daunting task, right? We're not going to know all the ins and outs of like tertiary and high grade porphyria and stuff. Your boards will tell you that you do. But I'll say in emergency medicine, it's very infrequent am I having to look up like genetic encoding stuff. But no matter what walks through the door, we need to be ready. Think about a puzzle piece, right? So you take that box, you dump it on the table. You have some that are upside down. You have some that are backwards. Your dog ate too, so you're bound for failure even before you start. What you do is you start flipping some over, finding some parallels, identifying some similarities, and you ultimately start putting something together. And that's what we do in the ER too, right? We really work on trying to figure out where these pieces of the puzzle work together and how they fit. And sometimes we can get a picture, right? Sometimes we know what's going on, but other times we don't. And that's where the beauty of our job comes in, right? Because we're able to say, hey, in real time, to my surgery friends, to my critical care friends, to my OBGYN, HEMONC, hey, I've got this patient that I've started. I'm working on my initial critical resuscitation and evaluation, but I need your help. We have this constant collaboration, and we end up touching most people in our hospital. It's the best, right? Sometimes that leads to a little bit of friction, but for the most part, it really allows for incredible and ultimate patient care. That being said, we have a little bit of a different mindset, right? So our surgical friends, they want to find the bleeding vessel to stop it. They want to find the infected organ, the big old abscess, and cut it out. Our medicine friends wants to find the incredible, very specific diagnosis and work on those incredible labs, incredible resuscitation and medicines to really try to figure out what's going on. So they play the game to win, right? They want to find the thing, which is interesting because we don't play the game to win. We play the game to not lose, which is a little bit of a different mindset, right? And what that means is all of you are going to be responsible to catch the life threat. And that's what we do. That's pretty cool. It's really cool. We see people sometimes on the worst day of their life, right? From our critical trauma resuscitations to our incredibly ill, critically ill patients as well. And we have to be able to be prepared to act and think rapidly. But we also have to make sure that we can take the time to stop and slow down, right? Sometimes we have to be the person to tell a loved one that their family member didn't make it. Sometimes we have to be the one to tell them we found cancer on your CT. And it's really hard to go back and forth, the throttle up and down, but that's who we are. We are here to take care of people for whatever they need, right? At the end of the day, I leave, and all of the rest of the faculty that are here, we leave having helped dozens of people every day. And sometimes that's, that's totally incredible resuscitation where you're riding the gurney down, like pushing on the chest. But most of the time it's not. Sometimes it's connecting someone with substance use or mental health issues with resources, giving them an ear to say, hey, I think that you really matter. I'd like to help you out. Or it's telling a mom, hey, you know what, your little one's gonna be just fine. I hear you when you're really, really scared, and that's okay. And I'm glad that you came here. But that reassurance is helpful too. So the Arizona EM-MSC has put together an incredible event for you today. I am so honored to be a member of absolutely the titans of emergency medicine education here in Arizona. What I want to do is take a little bit of time and give you some tips for success of what to do when you leave here. Residency selection is really scary, right? It's really nerve-wracking. It's really frustrating. Anyone you ask, from residents to attendings, will still remember the feelings. I don't remember like the day-to-day stuff, but I still remember like the frustration and fear, especially now, right? We don't really know what's going to happen. Are we going to be doing Zoom? Are we doing virtual? How do we get the feel for the residency that everyone talks about? And we're going to jump into that in just a second. So the way you do is do exactly what you're doing now, right? All of you first years, all of you second years, actually second years, either you're virtual, and I'm sorry, or you're out studying, which I get it. Think about what you want your life to be like when you grow up, right? What is going to be the place that's going to allow you to be the best version of yourself? And I'm going to say that again, right? So if you are tied to a certain location, own that location. If you are much more of, hey, I need to be outdoors, I need to get the sun, look at those places. If you are I need to be community because I want to go back home to my small rural location, find a job that will train you like that. Do you want to be at the big ivory tower where you have research and subspecialties at your fingertips? Start thinking about that. And it takes a little bit of introspection, right? And I put this up here. One of the, in my opinion, one of the best resources is Match or EMRA Match. It's through the Emergency Medicine Residents Association. They use Google Maps to essentially put up all residencies. And for my friends with the pediatric EM residency down in Tucson, I'm so sorry that's not represented down there. I know that you guys are super rad and doing awesome things down there too. And I'm really only gonna leave this up here because I mean, you don't really need to leave Arizona. I mean, we have the best ones here, right? So, I mean, obviously no conflict of interest with that or anything. But start exploring and start looking at some of these different areas, right? This early on, and even further on in your career, there's so many ways to figure out where you want to go. And then you're going to have a lot of people, and I'm sure you're going to hear it today. I'm going to put all of us leaders on the spot. We're all going to say, hey, find the place that has your best fit. And I remember when I was a med student saying, I don't know what that means. And what that really means is it takes some introspection. I told you I was going to say this again. To find the best fit for you, you need to think about who you are. What are the things that make you you? Is it family? Is it religion? Is it academics? Is it being outside? Again, knowing what builds you up will give you that foundation to be an incredible, incredible physician. The dirty little secret is you're going to go to any accredited emergency medicine residency and you're going to graduate a doctor, right? But you can make a decision of either surviving those 3 or 4 or maybe even more years, or actually enjoying it and thriving. And that's where finding your fit matters. The next one is joining professional organizations. I threw a splash up here of a bunch of different acronyms. We have ACEP, EMRA, ACEP, AAM, R2D2, C3PO. I'm glad I got a laugh out of that. The joke, I thought the joke was like kind of funny, but I figured we could like move on. Okay. Not only will this help you get more exposure in the specialty, but it helps you develop mentorship, helps you get exposure, and frankly, it will be another line item on your CV that's showing us as leaders, hey, this is a person that has showed early and constant dedication to our specialty. And then the last one is mentorship. And that's what we're doing here today, right? There's an old proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I got to where I am because I stood on the shoulders of my mentors. And the best kind of doctor, the best person is both reaching up as well as reaching down. So we are always working on trying to figure out how we can help you guys and figure out how do we get you to be with us. So today, ask questions, build relationships, get contacts, really start growing your own personal network. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm truly humbled and excited to be here, a member of this incredible conference with, again, some huge titans within Arizona emergency medicine. Again, you have Arizona emergency medicine at your fingertips today, guys. Use it. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Comp. Let me get room PC first on there. Cool. Well, the next thing we're going to do probably is just kind of move right along and start introducing our fantastic faculty, PDs, APDs. and chief residents who have so generously donated their time today. And you'll also at this time get to meet some of the council that has been working so hard to put this event together. So I think Jamie, you're up first.
That I am. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Stewart, and I'm a first-year medical student at the Arizona College of Osteopathic Medicine at Midwestern. I'm currently serving as the website editor for the EM Student Council. Obviously, I have a strong interest in emergency medicine, especially after working as an EMT for several years and volunteering with Ski Patrol. But I also love to play the piano, learn US history, and advocate for healthcare policy reform. And today, I have the distinct pleasure to introduce you all to Dr. Trung from Kingman Medical Center. Dr. Trung is currently an assistant program director and medical clerkship director for the emergency medicine residency program at KRMC. She graduated from a 4-year program at Kingman and completed a 1-year medical education fellowship after that. She's currently pursuing her Doctor of Education for Health Professions, and she has a strong interest in medical education with a special focus for student education. She is married to a fellow EM doc, and they enjoy spending their time with their dog, Obi, and doing pretty much anything except for talking about emergency medicine. Her other interests include traveling, cooking, television, and family dinner with her group of friends each week. And with that, I'll pass it off to fellow EM Council member Mallory.
Okay, so my name is Mallory Zimbauer. I am a first-year osteopathic medical student at ATSU SOMA here in Arizona. I have a big interest in emergency medicine. I've been a paramedic for 12 years. I was an EMT for about 3 years before that. So we're going on like 15 years of ambulancing. Hence the reason it's time to move on to bigger and better things. So I have a very deep love of emergency medicine. I also really enjoy harm reduction and following that. Community medicine, the underserved, and I would eventually like, when I grow up, I would like to be a rural emergency medicine physician, kind of where closer to the style that I grew up in my little mountain towns. So I'm going to be introducing Dr. Philip Hannon. He is joining us via Zoom today. He is the representative of the University of Arizona South Campus. He is core faculty member and alumni from there. And we also have a couple of residents that'll be joining us, but we have Dr. Hannon from U of A.
Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, guys. My name is Philip Hannon, as you just said. I'm a board certified physician at South Campus, and I trained there as well. I'm originally from Colorado, did my medical school there, and then did residency and fellowship down here in emergency medical services. I'm here representing the South Campus program, one of the 2 programs we have in Tucson. The other one, Dr. Al Fiorello, who's also on this call, will be representing. I'm sorry that both our PD and our APD couldn't be here, but I'm one of the core faculty members, so I provide mentorship and I'm part of the education committee for that group. So I'm excited to kind of tell you about our little program down here. There's 6 of us and we're strongly affiliated with the university campus program here. We're a 3-year program. I trained there a few years past and have stayed, which is emblematic to how great of a program it is. We have a lot of rural focus and a lot of underserved focus and do Spanish and things like that. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit more when we get into our breakouts.
Thank you for introducing yourself. And I'm Fatima Hasifa, 4th year at U of A Phoenix, and I'll be introducing Dr. Fiorello in a little bit. So I got interested in emergency medicine through scribing, actually worked with Kelsey Newbold, who you'll be meeting shortly. And I'm currently the MSc liaison for U of A Phoenix as well. And then I'll tell you a little bit about Dr. Fiorello. So he's the program director for U of A Tucson main campus. And he grew up and went to college as well as medical school in Buffalo, New York. And before making the great trek across the country to Arizona for residency, he's also formerly served as the commission core for the Indian Health Services in Arizona before returning to academic medicine at the U of A in Tucson. His special interests in EM include point of care ultrasound, sepsis, medical education, as well as risk management.
Thanks for that introduction. Happy to be here today.
Before we move on to the next one, Dr. Trong, is there anything that you want to say just about your program? Just we kind of like kept moving on a little bit. Fantastic.
Hi, everybody. I am Justin Blankenbaker. I'm a incoming third year at Arizona College of Osteopathic Medicine. I have a longstanding interest in emergency medicine. I worked here in the Valley as a medical scribe at Honor Health Deer Valley, and then a little bit at JCL in Sonoran as well. I did that for about 3 years before starting medical school. And so I'm looking to rejoin the EM community in my career. So I will be introducing the Abrazo Chief Resident, Dr. Christina Liu, who's here with us today. So Dr. Liu was born and raised in Northern California and graduated from Stanford with the bachelor's in human biology. She subsequently spent several years working in Los Angeles County as an EMT, where her passion and curiosity for EM was first ignited. During her time at AT Still University, she fostered a wide variety of clinical interests, including but not limited to bedside ultrasound, event medicine, and community and street medicine. Dr. Liu now serves as the chief resident for Abrazo's EM residency program.
All right, I'm up next. My name is Josiah Bardwell. I am the Creighton representative for the Med Student Council, as you can see, repping Creighton. First got interested in emergency medicine like a lot of people through scribing, and just kind of realized that, there's no better specialty. So let's make it happen. Today, I have the honor of introducing the man who needs no introduction because he just spoke to us for 15 minutes. That was awesome. Dr. Comp. So kind of like Alyssa said, just going off of that, he's an associate PD at Maricopa County. He's originally from Arizona. Went to U of A for undergrad, med school at KCUMB, Kansas City. If you hear a lawnmower in the background, I'm at my in-laws' house, and I think they're doing some yard work, so that's what's going on. KCUMB, residency in Columbus, Ohio, fellowship trained in wilderness medicine. He develops content for MedWar events across the country and has served as a chair of the EMRA Wilderness Medicine Committee and a member of the organization's executive board of directors.
All right, and then so you can finally have the answer to who is this loud person that's been talking at you for periodically. I'm John Michael Sherman. I'm the current fourth year at right here at UA College of Medicine, Phoenix. I am the vice chair this year on the council. I have been interested in emergency medicine. It was pretty much my first foray. I was a scribe for far too long, but I enjoyed every minute of it. And I'm also interested in toxicology. I also was forced to go into EM because I ride a road bike. So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Dr. Thomas Whiting. Dr. Thomas Whiting is the clerkship director for U of A in EM, or co-clerkship director. He is also the site director at Valleywise, or COPA if you're cool. He did his residency at COPA, followed that up with a point of care ultrasound fellowship, and then stayed on as faculty. And in the precious few moments when he's not spending time at work or with family, he likes to read sci-fi. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Whiting.
Hey everybody, glad to be here. Also, as I like to play video games as well as read sci-fi, so all your typical EM bros. So there is variation between us, just to let you guys know.
I also want to give a plug and shout out to the one program that was unable to make it here today, and that is the combined EM PEDS program at the U of A in Tucson. Dr. Leach is the program director there, and it is a terrific 5-year combined program. You will be board certified in both pediatrics and emergency medicine. So if you are interested in both of those fields, in caring for the pediatric population and advocating for those kids, and as well as treating them both as they, kind of go through their milestones, and also should they get bronchiolitis or otitis media or some of the other stuff that kids get, you should definitely check out that program. Reach out to Dr. Leach and find out more about it, because it's terrific down there, and one of very few in the country, and we're lucky enough to have it right here in our backyard. Cool.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Newbold. I'm a second year going into third year at ASCOM. I was born and raised in Tucson before coming up to Phoenix to complete my undergrad at ASU. I was a chief scribe out in the East Valley at Banner Baywood for 4 years in the ED, and before starting at Midwestern. So I have a big passion for EM and also interests in bedside ultrasound. I currently serve as the ASCOM executive committee member for the Med Student Council here, and we're super excited to have you all here. So thanks for being here. We're going to jump into the group question panel now. So we have a set of pre-prepared questions for this session. If you're in attendance, either virtually or in person, and you have additional questions, if we have time at the end, you can ask them, or you can save those for the breakout sessions. So we're going to have a 2-minute limit per PD per question. So our student council members will go through and ask the questions, and we'll have 2 minutes for each program to answer. So anyone, whoever wants to jump in first to answer. Oh yeah, Dr. Comp.
That might be.
Yeah, that's a great idea. All right. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
we can pass.
Can I request that you guys all shimmy over to your right a little bit so that we can all see you in the camera from here?
Sorry, this is
Yeah, perfect.
Hey.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Perfect. All right. So let's see. So whoever wants to jump in first can go ahead. But our first question is, what makes your program unique, and how would you describe your program's culture?
All right, so I'm Justine. I'm from Kingman. I'm the APV there. So I think our program is unique because we are actually a small rural center, and so we are an unopposed residency program. So we have EM and family medicine, and so we have specialty support like cardiology, CT surgery, ortho, and all that, but we have no fellowship programs there, no other residents, and so management of patients start to finish is your own. And so I think that lends to a lot of hands-on learning for our residents. And it's not to say that there's no learning support. If we need to consult cardiology and kind of get their input, we have that available, but residents really kind of just learn to master all these things. And so we've seen our residents go on to other programs and be kind of completely prepared to manage everything start to finish on their own, all the emergencies, the procedures and things like that. And so what was the other part? Culture. Gosh, I like hate answering this question only because I feel like the culture is kind of what everybody else like perceives it to be. And so we are a smaller hospital. So I would say our culture is kind of, the residents are tight knit, they're a family. And so I've seen some of our residents that come on, they've rotated together. They, got along when they rotated, but they really became a family when they joined the residency program. And so we take 6 per class. So we have 18 total. We have probably about like 7 dedicated core faculty members. And so we've got like a really small group who kind of just support each other throughout the entire way. So it's a small, close culture, I'd say.
Sure, I'll go. So I think we really have a culture of collaboration and support. I echo, I mean, when you go into emergency medicine, most all of our programs are going to say, hey, we have a really family feel. But I don't want to be disparaging to other specialties, but that's because we're not neurosurgeons, right? So we have the ability to sort of like bond and grow and learn together. But what I really like is we have really developed this culture where our seniors, our chiefs, really work on direct education and mentorship throughout the department, and that is both outside of the department, but also in the department, right? So people spend time together through all classes, water sports, activities, mountain biking, running, but that also translates to, hey, I have a really challenging resuscitation. I just need to tap someone on the shoulder, and everyone is comfortable doing that. One of my favorite things educationally is that even though we are very much a county-based program, we send our residents to different sites all through Phoenix to be able to have experiences, hey, we work in, I like to call it down and dirty emergency medicine, but then we also send you up to Mayo, we send you to Joe's, we send you to Phoenix Children's, we send you to Banner University to really get a good feel about what it's like to practice in different areas and what it's like when it is going to be you and what it's like when you do have the specialist that is the left-sided kidney for Sagittarius specialists that we have at some of our larger hospitals too.
So this is like, again, I'm Christina Leo, one of the chief residents from the Abrazo program. It's just funny as I hear these answers, I'm like, dang, maybe we're not that unique. But I think it's funny because like we all are like EM people. So we have like certain commonalities and common themes, which I really, really enjoy. So Abrazo, our culture is very much as we're making it, because as you guys probably know, we're a new program. My class, so we're PGY2s, we are the most senior current class. So coming into this new academic year, we'll finally have a full complement. We have 6 per class, so it's going to be a total of 18 as well. So far, it's been, again, not super unique, but very close knit. We are a very family culture. Like I babysat my co-residents dogs and maybe small children too, and we hang out at pool parties and that stuff, and it's a lot of fun. We definitely rely on each other a lot, and it's been really fun because, especially as one of the more senior classes, that we had those close dynamics with our faculty because we didn't have our seniors to lean on, so we were very close with all of our core and clinical faculty as well. What else? I think in terms of our overall experience, though, it's an interesting blend. It's like mostly very community ED, but we're trying to make that pivot into a little bit more academic. So it's definitely still a lot, like I said, very what you make of it. But I think that's another kind of common underlying theme of EM. Like we just do the things, right? We make the best out of all of our situations. And I think it's like part of that. So, and then if you have other questions later.
We also have the,
oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
Our virtual friends.
I guess I'll jump in here, Al from the University Campus program in Tucson. So as was mentioned, we're one of 3 programs down here. We are the University Campus or Tucson Campus program is the larger of the 3 with 15 residents per class. What makes us maybe a little unique is how we've set up our EM rotations is a little different than most places. We have 3 EDs that we staff primarily, the University Campus or Tucson Campus ED, the South Campus, and our PEDS ED. And instead of doing blocks of time in those 3, what we've done is we actually spread that out over your entire 3 years. So whenever you're on an EM rotation, you're rotating some of your shifts at the University Campus, some at South Campus. It operates a lot more like a community hospital without all your consultants at your beck and call, and transfer out kind of to the higher acuity things over to the university. And then some of your shifts in the PEDS ED. So you get a longitudinal PEDS ED experience, community experience, university experience every single month that you're on. We also have a role of our senior residents called the resuscitation captain shift. It's a few shifts every month you're in the ED as a senior resident, where you are responsible for the sickest patients in the ED, but not primarily responsible for them. So another resident's taking care of that patient, but you're there to help. You're there to help the intern with those procedures, get that septic shock patient lined and ready and resuscitated to go up to the ICU. Kind of all the fun stuff in emergency medicine without the charting. Very popular shift with our senior residents. Our culture, I think, is a relaxed culture. We certainly have a focus on a quality product, whether that's patient care or research or education, but we don't feel like you need to be all uptight to get to that point. Everyone's on a first name basis. Faculty hang out with residents outside the emergency department. Myself and our other residency leadership don't look at this as our program. We look at it as our residents program, and constantly change the program year to year, to realizing there's new learners, different ways people learn every year, different goals of the people in the program. So kind of constantly in flux to try and make it the best program that we can.
This is Philip Hannon again, representing South Campus. I'll tag team here with Al since we work so closely together. So I represent the South Campus version, one of the 3 satellites that he mentioned. So again, there's kind of those 3 EDs. South Campus is the most rural / community version of those 3 emergency departments. I trained there primarily, and so being a resident there, you would train with 6 people, but have the backup of the 15 at university, and then the 2 from the EMPEDS program that all work together, which is very nice on being a small program and yet having the backup of the large one. I think it's a unique program because we do at South, we do a lot of rural rotations. So if you're interested in the underserved or the border population, that kind of thing, that border patrol medicine, those kinds of interests, South Campus serves those very well. I think what Al also alluded to is that we're very dynamic programs, both Tucson and South Campus. If there's a problem with a rotation, or if there's a concern with how learning is going on an off-service rotation or experience, the residents can petition or just discuss with our leadership, and we make those changes to make the learning better for the next group. So I think that's something that's pretty unique. I'll echo the thing that's not unique, that we're all a family, we're very tight knit. So I think like coming here and experiencing it in person is very nice. Like Al alluded, there's not a big hierarchy in the emergency department here. You speak to your attendings by a first name basis nearly all the time. You hang out with them, that kind of thing. The culture is very peer-based and supportive.
All right. Thank you all for those great answers. Moving on to the next question. What do you look for in applicants, specifically in terms of their application, interview, or during an audition rotation that places them at the top of your rank list?
Hello. Okay. So as the person that has gone through this process more recently, you know, all the stuff that usually applies, right? Like your grades, your scores, all that jazz. I think something unique to our program, because we are a newer program, one of the things that I know we look for in particular is like, is this person a grown-up, right? Like, do you have experience outside of medicine? Have you worked doing some other jobs? Like, can you function in this environment as an actual grown-up? Like how much, what's the word I want? Like hand holding versus like motivation and autonomy. So that's something that's really, really important to convey through your application, through your interview, and then definitely when you're on auditions, like being that like self-motivated person is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as applicants, sometimes you guys can feel like a number, right? And the last few years with COVID have been very scary. You haven't been able to have the chance to go and see as many programs. And so I do think one of the important things with EM right now is that you guys actually see a program, right? Like I couldn't imagine matching into a program and spending 3 years there and having never seen it, having never been there, right? And so I think as a program, it's really important when you guys come rotate with us. And so some of the things that our program leadership has talked about with applicants that we like to see is a certain degree of self-motivation, because as adult learners, right, you're going to get out of residency what you put into it. You're all going to come in with a baseline medical knowledge that any program is going to be able to build upon you so that you're going to be great EM doctors wherever you train, but you have to have the motivation to get yourself there, right? A certain amount of self-awareness, because ER is a team sport, right? And so, you know, there is no hierarchy in the sense of when a patient's crashing and you just need to save them. And so a little bit of self-awareness of what your role is in that team, right? Like how you can best support everyone's needs there. And then the last thing is ability to take feedback. I think that for all of us to be able to grow into great physicians, leaders, teachers, and things like that, you have to kind of be able to, you know, expand on your weaknesses and just get better. And I don't think that happens in comfort zones. And so feedback and criticisms isn't always meant to tear you down. Our program, you know, we want it to make you better. And so we want to see students that are very open to that and flexible and take it and use it to better themselves. And so those are the 3 things we look for: self-motivation, self-awareness, and openness to feedback.
That's great. So
when I'm looking at applications, I really look for dedication to self and qualities of leadership. And I'm not saying that you have to have the line item that says you were the president of the EMIG or that you were the secretary. I want to see, which is great, right? I mean, if you have that, that's great. But almost something that holds almost as much weight is if you on your application are able to say, hey, I started up the EM group Suture Lab. And I really worked with a lot of the exec committee to really say, hey, I would like to make this happen. I'd like to work this through. So not just being a participant, but really working on figuring out how you can grow your own skills to be a leader, because that's the kind of person that we're looking for at our program. Longitudinal commitment is and dedication to anything is something that I love seeing. I was a med student. I was a resident. So I know that when you volunteered for 30 minutes at a food pantry and make that a whole line item on your ARIS application, like I can see that. So if you have something that, even if it's not related to medicine, I love seeing people that in their application say that they were a waiter. I love seeing people that said that they've been coaches for sports. That's the kind of stuff that we're really looking for.
For us, I think that Tucson ties and Arizona ties are important. If you're looking for a New York City, an LA, a Chicago, Tucson's not the place for you. So if you have ties to Tucson, ties to Arizona, definitely highlight that in your application, because we want people to be happy where they are, where they're trained. And if you're not looking for Tucson, this may not be the place for you. And then, as was mentioned, commitment to things I think is important. When you have 28 different one-day volunteer experiences, it doesn't mean quite as much to me as something that's been longitudinal that you've committed yourself to for a long time. Those are probably some of the big things.
I'll comment on how our residents kind of pick our classes. So Dr. Stoneking, our PD, provides kind of our regular list of our med students who've rotated through. There's clearly some sifting based on academics and minimum requirements, things that every residency does. And then every year there's a day where all of our residents get together and rank what they perceive to be the medical students that they would like to work with the next year. I think that is really an excellent opportunity to allow residents to form their own family in a way. So I think the things that tend to get people down here are, if you really want to be here, just like Al was just mentioning, if you actually want to be in Tucson, particularly if you want to be at South Campus or University Campus, why do you want to be at one over the other? So if you like, dedicated Spanish classes, which is offered at South, or that rural feel, or if you have an idea that you could see yourself in South Campus for a longer time, then that's very valuable. I think that's what I got.
I don't know if there's anyone else that's going, but I was just going to piggyback off of what Dr. Comp said about our program at COPA. So I think, and everyone's kind of voiced the same thing, but in emergency medicine, as our role is kind of the safety net and interacting with a bunch of different people and leaders of teams, I think everyone's kind of said an iteration of it, but emotional intelligence, and I'm more on the selection of students that rotate through our program, but I also sit on the committee that helps with, finalizing the rank list as well, and help with interviewing the students that are applying for our residency. But I think, a lot of weight is put on up to this point. And we've all been there, board scores, but that's going pass fail. Basically your academic, strength up to this point. But I would say, like, I can teach anyone to be a good ER doc, but I can't teach you how to be like a good person and a well-rounded, emotionally intelligent human. That's something that takes kind of internal understanding, introspection, and effort, and is surprisingly less common than you think it is. In a population of generally intelligent adult human learners within the house of medicine. So I would say emotional intelligence. If you haven't heard about it, read about it, because it's one of the bigger things that I like to stress for our learners, because I think that's the actually more important aspect of you as a human and as an applicant. And then, of course, we're super family feely as well. Second everything, but that's kind of EM in general.
I got a tally going for the family feeling. Thank you guys all so much. Those were great answers. I have a question kind of geared towards the last couple of years with COVID and kind of potentially going to be a large part of this interview season. But since applicants may not be able to interview in person at any or all of their programs, how do you recommend students stand out in a virtual setting?
I'll start.
I would say know the programs you're interviewing at. It kind of sounds silly, but when I'm interviewing somebody that obviously has done their homework and knows about our program and our faculty, it definitely means that you've taken the time to be interested, and it's just not another checkbox and another interview for you. So kind of know where you're interviewing. We're also almost certainly going to go to signal preferencing this year. I don't know if you guys have heard of that yet, but everyone will have a few tokens that they can use to electronically signal a preference to a program. So if there is, 5 programs that you really want an interview at, you'd use those to tell them basically why you want to interview there. I would say definitely talk to your mentors on how to kind of best utilize those, because I think those are going to be important this year with programs deciding on who they're going to interview.
I think that's fantastic, right? So knowing where you're interviewing and when you're interviewing, add those touch points, right? So be able to say, hey, I'm really interested in Phoenix, or I'm really interested in Tucson, and here is how I can tie that into my interview. Also by doing stuff like this, right? This is how you do it, right? By the first time that I meet someone, obviously we don't get to meet everyone, but if I've met you before and I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces, when I interview you and I already know, I know you because you've come to these events. I've seen you on the EMRA Hangouts. I've emailed you back and forth because you've had very specific questions about my program. That's how you let us know that this is where you want to be.
I would just like to add a piece of advice. Again, as the person that's somewhat gone through this more recently, I think it's easy when you're the student and you're like, in your head, you're like, oh my God, I don't care. I'll go anywhere. Just take me, please. Right. Like if we're honest, we all know that feeling. But what I just want you guys to remember that whenever your interviews happen, like slowly roll, sit down. You made it to this point, right? You made it through those initial barriers of like scores and grades and all that, those minimum requirements we've been talking about. And I want you to think about interviewing the program, if that makes sense, right? Because we talked a lot about, yeah, we want you to be happy and stuff, but like, how do you get to that point? You have to be prepared and ask the right questions of the program. You're interviewing them at this point. I want you to like remember that, because it's weird and you're scared and you just want to go anywhere. But like slow your roll and just think about like, okay, how does this program fit my needs and my goals? Like, how is it going to help me get to where I want to be? Okay.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that answer. That was a really good one. I think this is the first time for a lot of people in your career where people will be looking at you and wanting you, as opposed to you trying to prove yourself and apply as hard as you have been your whole life. Getting into undergrad, getting into medical school, it's this kind of constant battle to get in. Here, you're going to be able to choose your program because it fits you. So I think interviewing well, as Dr. Fialero mentioned, the program you're interviewing at. As an kind of added advice that I did for my programs, I looked up every person who was going to interview me, looked at why they chose Tucson, looked online what they were doing. I know that might be seems extra. It worked very well in interviews. So it gets you a lot of questions. A lot of people are like, wow, you really know this program very well, and you can stand out that way, especially when you're not going to be able to get a good feel for your program, and they're not going to get a good feel for you unless you put in some extra work. That work will really pay off. I'll also say there are some certain questions that you'll always be asked, what makes you interested in emergency medicine? And you need to know those questions very well. You need to just answer those, practice with a friend, don't read off a card, but just have something, an answer within grasp. And it's very easy to tell when students haven't formulated an organized structure or an answer to that question, and it comes off as being unprepared. So when you have a kind of a snapshot of people now, which we're going to have with a lot of these electronic interviews, you have to find your ways to stand out, and being prepared is one of the best ways you can do that.
I think that's really fantastic. And I just want to say one more thing. Identify something called your elevator speech, right? So it's something that you can Google, okay? But when I am introducing myself, I'm going to say, hey, my name is Jeff Comp. Tell me about yourself. And that's a very specific question. Because the way that you don't answer that is, well, I and just sort of like darting around, oh, hey, my name is Jeff Comp. I do emergency medicine in Phoenix, Arizona. I work on education and wilderness medicine. And then you can kind of grow and build from there. So identify that and practice that to prepare, because I think that is a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic point.
I would add one more thing about virtual interviews: be on time, which is a little bit of a challenge with our weird Arizona time not matching up with the rest of the world. If the program manager needs to make phone calls in the morning, track you down, see where you are, we hear back about that, and it's just as an initial negative tick that's a little hard to overcome.
Got one more. This is I guess, I don't know if I'm sort of like showing you the wizard behind the curtain, but a lot of us are still doing the pre-interview like social get together meetup on Zoom, and it seems boring and ridiculous, right? Really try to get there unless there's a specific reason. But if you just don't go, we notice. So I mean, obviously things come up. We recognize, we can't make everything, but let us know if you're not going to be there, or if there's, and that just is the same thing as coming in late to Zoom.
All right, thank you guys so much for those responses. My next question is, what steps is your program taking to ensure that senior residents have job security in light of ACEP statements regarding the future job market?
I can answer that one in terms of my program. So we've added a couple more dynamic rotations into our senior year. One of them is a month where residents can do whatever they want, basically. And so this year, a couple of them have shifted that month earlier. One did an audition rotation at some of these places in rural areas and then secured jobs at those locations that they were auditioning at. And then we've also had folks interested in fellowship, and I'll give me as an example. So I'm emergency medicine services certified, or fellowship trained, and I was interested, and so I did a rotation in EMS that at the end of my junior year, beginning of my senior year, to try to cement that. And so I think that is a good way to kind of secure jobs. It's kind of an early interview, if you will.
Something that I'm really proud of is our longitudinal mentorship. We really start early on trying to identify, just like I said earlier, what you want your life to look like. Is that going to be more academics? Is that going to be more of a fellowship? We really start helping you guys identify and learn what you enjoy about emergency medicine through our specialty track system, through our off-service electives, through our pretty huge network of alumni, to really help you find, if it's location-based, we can probably find you mentors there. If it's fellowship-based, we can really work on trying to set you up for success in that process. This is a really, really important question. And I think it's really important that you guys are armed with the information. Like full disclosure, I don't have any skin in the game, but ACEP does have a workforce task force. And you can go on their website and Google it and see all the things that are happening within all of the different emergency medicine organizations to help us identify and and alleviate and work on this issue. Something that I've heard, unfortunately, and I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox, is that some med schools have been telling their med students to not go to emergency medicine, it's really sad. Please, if you have any questions about that, reach out to any of us, but also check out the ACEP workforce website to get some information about what's actually being done.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing you said, is that I've been getting this question more often over the last few years with the workforce and what's the job market going to look like. We've never worried at our program about our residents getting jobs. They're just so prepared and they're ready to go work anywhere. But one of the things that we've kind of focused on is just bringing wellness into this. And so we support also tracks and, diverse rotations in the residents last year and things like that. But we want our residents to develop a niche, right? Burnout is so high and so real. So we want our residents to have an interest in something else. And we really push our residents to kind of explore things that they might not think that they'll like, or they might not have the chance to do, except when they're in residency. And so we've offered them the opportunity to get their RDMS certification while they're in residency, right? Their AWLS and their FOM, their wilderness courses, right? We pay for that while they're in residency. We make sure they have the time off, because even fellowship opportunities, right? If that's not something they want to extend their training by another year, if it's something that we can offer them while they're in residency so that they're super prepared to either get a job or at least have something other than just an EM clinical job to do. So it helps with burnout, stress, wellness, and then they're just going to be set up for a job. It's sad to hear, but it's not something that I've worried about for our residents. But I think when you talk about interviewing a program and for what's best for you, ask about these things. Say, hey, I'm really interested in ultrasound. What do you offer during residency to get me there? I'm interested in leadership. Do you pay for courses? Do you give me time off to go to conferences? And so that's how you guys are going to get to this in the future, is by finding a program that's going to offer those things for you.
It was mentioned to tap into the alumni network. I think that's huge. We're fortunate here. We've been a program that's been around for a long time, over 350 grads from Maine to Hawaii. You may be at a program that doesn't have a huge alumni network, but you have some alumni. Probably tap into them. A foot in the door for an interview, I think, is huge. And if you're at a newer program that doesn't have a big alumni network, the faculty have networks. So, hit them up, tell them where you want to go. Those personal interactions, I think, go a really long way in getting interviews places. And then think outside of, think of what you may want to do that you didn't really think you wanted to do. Someone mentioned earlier that she wanted to do rural emergency medicine. There will always be a job market in the rural world for emergency medicine. There's a lot of places out there that staff their rural EDs with non-EM trained docs that would love to have emergency medicine trained folks. I did 4 years with the Indian Health Service after residency, and that was a phenomenal experience. So think of maybe things that, not necessarily what you originally thought you may want to do in emergency medicine.
I'll lastly echo what Al just said, that that network of alumni can't be understated. That is so highly powerful. I've already been able to help a couple people get jobs, even being recently out of fellowship and only being faculty here for a couple years. Just speaking to people and knowing the ins at other programs will get you jobs. And when you have a big group, it's much easier.
One more press. There you go. One more. There we go.
Yeah, no, okay. All right. So the next question is, how does your program support individuals' unique needs, specifically in regards to family, mental health, religion, gender, identity, culture, etc.?
So you mentioned fit in ER, right? And I think everybody always kind of mentions that, but we try to do a big sib little sig program with our incoming interns, but every year, you know what I mean? Everybody just kind of gravitates towards your own people. And so our residents are interested in mostly outdoorsy stuff, as EM residents are, but there are, different kind of interests within the faculty and then the residents. And so they kind of just gravitate towards each other. We do something every month for our medical students. It's called a resident and student hangout. So it's the RASH. And so that's actually I know it's so weird to say, but so the students, the residents, their family members all get together and do that. And so I think that's really good for their wellness, and because it's so hard to coordinate EM schedules sometimes, right? Being off service, being on shift at the same time. And so that's something that we try to give them all off for, so that everybody can kind of be together at once. I know that the spouses, like the significant others of our residents, always get together and like hang out. Unfortunately, Kingman is small, it's rural, right? We don't have a lot in the way of like culture and diversity, but we've had residents and students in the past who are interested in those things, and they're able to like spearhead their own initiatives, and we make sure that they're really well supported in endeavors like that by, you know, do you need time off? Do you need us to throw a fundraiser? Do you need one of the attendings' houses to host something? And so that's as much as we can offer. Like, we don't have the big city for all these other like fun events, but we try to at least make sure that they get together and do something cool.
I love that. That's awesome. And like, we're also a small program, and again, a new one too, right? So we're still figuring out our groove, but like, life happens, things come up, people get pregnant and have kids. Like, we just figure it out because we're EM people. We just do, I've already said this before, we just do the things though, right? So we are still like figuring out our rhythm, but we are able to like make things work, you know, because we're new, because we have that ability to pivot. It's kind of scary, but also really nice to have that maneuverability in terms of like, how do we accommodate the things that happen? I think that's something that's really important, and something that I've really like valued being where I am right now.
So I think, and I'm really proud of what we do, because I think that we're very intentional with this. I'm one of the leaders of sort of the Office of Wellness for the residents. And we have both like institution-wide through Creighton, but also sort of on the ground initiatives, including everything from organizing and developing and introducing mental health resources as needed, direct and specific mentorship with issues like burnout, imposter syndrome, fear, sleep issues, relationship issues. We have a really close-knit group of faculty that really works on providing these kinds of services. We're also not providing, but offering and mentoring within the resources for that. We also use really heavily the technology WhatsApp for all of our outside I guess experiences. So we have like a water sports, snow sports, game night, reading. I'm in charge, and I'm one of the people for the Bachelor TV show viewing party, which is embarrassing, but that's my truth, so I'll own it. We really work on trying to provide experience and inclusivity with everyone. We've got a family for you guys here.
I'll say that I'm the leader
family.
of the...
Everyone check off your bingo card.
I'll say that I'm the board game group leader in mine. So not the Bachelor, but it's close. So for our individual needs, so there's a couple things that we've done this past year or the past couple of years, just to give you an idea. And one of them is providing mental health counselors for our residents during COVID. COVID has been very hard for a lot of us. You know, it's been like the most death that we've encountered probably in a decade or more, most of us in a career. So that mental health has been a big important focus here. We, as being kind of a border hospital, we see a lot of primary Spanish. We have heavily integrated Spanish and cultural competency into our lectures. We also do a lot of diversity and inclusion lectures. We also have spousal support. We do something called Partners in Medicine, where residents, partners can all get together and have support from each other as well. So I'll echo a lot of what other folks have said.
So being at the same place as Philip, we have a lot of the same things here for our program. Banner also sponsors something called Cultivating Happiness in Medicine, which helps sponsor some residency and physician-related activities that is always nice to tap into. We've also brought a lot of the DEI-related things into our lectures. We've done safe zone training in our didactic lectures. coming up in 2 weeks, we have a 2-hour seminar on treating gender diverse patients in the emergency department. So we're trying to bring some of those things into our didactics just to kind of open up the world. And I think when residency activities like that, that they identify with themselves, it makes it just easier to assimilate to the culture.
I thought of something else. Speaking of D&I and stuff, right? Like I've said a million times, our program is new. We're still figuring things out, but we do have a diversity and inclusion community I guess community too, faculty, core faculty, residents, everyone's involved. They've already pulled together some cool stuff. Like I'm going to be completely honest, right? Like I moved here from California. So coming here, especially during 2020, was very tumultuous social political time. And I was really like freaked out. I'm like, I know Arizona a little bit, but like this, I don't know this, this is different. And so I felt really like safe in this space, and we've had really cool opportunities that our residents have spearheaded, like bringing different like LGBT leaders in the community to come during our didactics as sort of our grand rounds. And that's been really helpful and impactful, that no matter what's going on outside, we have our space, our safe space together, and then just as a shameless plug to you guys, because you're med students, we do have something that the D&I committee is spearheading called the Minorities in Medicine. What's the word I want? Scholarship? Yeah, scholarship. And so if you're from historically underrepresented minority in medicine, you can apply through our website. Hit me up later. And basically our goal is to try to help you, like if you want to come rotate with us and the cost would be otherwise prohibitive, this is a really cool scholarship opportunity that can help facilitate that, because Arizona is not always cheap. It's not as expensive as California, but it's still not always like practical. We know how much we all owe for med school. It sucks. But we're always trying to do things and come up with new ways to make things better for all of us.
So the next question we already touched on a little bit, but if anyone has anything to add on this, what are some ways students can show or express interest without being annoying?
It's a good question. I think it's easy to be annoying in these days when everything is electronic. So one way to do that is to reach out to people. You can ask and see if people will chat with you via online, on emails, ask certain and specific questions. If I go there, how many months will I spend in the ICU? Or what do you guys offer for XYZ? Or what can I do to make my application stronger? If you reach out directly and ask the program directors explicitly what you're interested in, that looks impactful.
I'm going to defer to Dr. Whiting as our clerkship director to really help us sort of navigate this question.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question and kind of a difficult one. I tell the students I rotate with this as well. It's kind of that fine line, right, that you're trying to balance of being engaged and present without being, annoying and kind of overbearing. And it's really tough because I feel like basically whatever I say, people hear something different. But I was just said, as far as if you have specific questions, what I find annoying is when someone is like, hey, can I have time to talk? And I, say, yeah. And then they are very kind of vague, right? They lead off with, well, tell me about your program stuff. I'm like, well, we have a website. There's a lot of stuff available now that you can use to gain a lot of understanding of what a program is, stands for, and offers. So when you get that time, and again, I'm all for, I love talking to people that are interested in our program, and I love mentoring students to get them either an understanding of what emergency is, or if they want to do it, or how to go into it. But you got to have done kind of the legwork first, in that you're, reading up on the program that you're interested in, or you're reading up on EM if you're interested in that or not sure about it. Because really what we want to be able to provide is that granularity. Like, you should be able to go into the legwork to get the basics of it. And then you come to the mentor with the more granular kind of focused things that we can help you with. So yeah, just one of my pet peeves more or less is, I'll set aside time, talk to a student, and it's very vague in their questioning. So be as specific as you can, come with directed questions, and just make it look like you've at least done some of the legwork to approach the subject that you're bringing up. So I think it's difficult to really be vested, but again, it's as I talked about before, part of the emotional intelligence that can be demonstrated is when you have that understanding of how to approach a subject like, I'm interested in your program, tactfully. So again, very difficult because it's one of those, there's no great perfect answer for it. But yeah, I think the best thing that you can do is to go and prepare and realize that while we love mentoring and we love taking the time to talk with you and doing everything like that, we do have lives outside of medicine, right? So even mentors are busy. We're still working, at least part-time clinically, have lives outside and everything like that. So I think that is a part of the reason why I say make sure that you're into it focused, because just understanding the time that we set apart for it is, precious as well. And yours is too. So that's why we love to do it as well.
I would say going into the application process, again, going back to what I was saying about us trying to find Arizona ties and Tucson ties, it takes a little extra work, but tailoring your personal statement for a program that you really want to interview at, I think is useful. We do a holistic approach to our application reviews. We actually look at all of them. So if someone's personal statement says, I grew up in Tucson, my parents still live in Tucson, I'd really love to come back to Tucson, that means something to me. And I wouldn't know that unless you put that there. And then once the first round of interview invitations go out, if you find that you didn't get an interview at some place you wanted, reach out to them. A simple email saying, hey, I'm still interested and why. I actually personally go back and look at all of those applications when I get them. And did I miss somebody that we really should have interviewed because I didn't know this little detail about them? It's so easy just to check the box and apply at so many places nowadays. One of our biggest challenges is trying to figure out who really wants to be here as opposed to just sending out 75 applications.
Can I ask?
Also say that applies for clerkship when you're applying for clerkships as well. Same thing. Like if you have an interest and desire to go there, like I know some schools say don't reach out to programs, which I think does them a disservice. But like if you have an interest, a vested interest in a local, reach out. I think it's good.
And I'll comment too. When I was a medical student, I was waitlisted at South Campus. So, and then I emailed them, they got me in, and that was ultimately my number one, and I matched there, and I was still work there, and now I'm faculty here. So reach out to the locations, even if you're waitlisted. It's just a numbers game. It doesn't mean that the program has anything against you.
Does anybody want to share examples of something you guys might think is annoying or scared is annoying, and we can maybe help guide you on the best way to handle it?
Some role play.
Sometimes I feel like I email too much. So who was the best person to reach out to with these emails, like the program director, APD, clerkship, or program coordinator?
That's a really great question. It depends on what your question is, right? If you have a nuts and bolts question about the program travel day of experience, that should be the coordinator, right? If it's something very high level about the program in general, you can talk to one of the APDs or one of the one of the PDs. If it's something about a specific feature, hey, I'm really interested in EMS. Can you connect me with someone? I can go to anyone, right? I think the important, and I really want to piggyback with Dr. Fiorello about if you don't get an interview, send us an email, but you need to say why, right? I got a lot of emails saying, hey, I would love an opportunity. And then it was just a copy and paste to me, and I'm sure 50 other programs of your CV. But the ones that I keep are the ones that are, I grew up in Phoenix. I remember when I was a kid hiking up Camelback. And also, if you're going to copy and paste, this is a horror story, make sure that you edit, because I got one to another program. And that's like That's a big one, right? I mean, that's me sort of saying, hey, it looks like we did a good job in not interviewing you. That's a really good question. So a moral of the story, understand or know your question. And even if you maybe send it to the wrong person, they will put you in contact with the right person.
Yeah, piggybacking off that, we're a little weird situation that we have this South Campus University Campus program. This last year, I got one that said, I'm really interested in your dedicated medical Spanish curriculum. We don't have that. South Campus has that.
Yeah. So if I can just distill it down and into the way that I like to frame it is just be intentional with your communications. We're all saying it in different ways, but that's the way that works in my head. So just be intentional in your communication. What am I asking? Who do I want to get this information from? How is this going to best serve me? And we can form something together, be intentional.
I would just say that that's sometimes difficult, like from the medical student portion of they don't who to approach. So my general advice is to go through the program coordinator, and then they can filter and figure out who that should go to, right? So sometimes you're like, I don't know exactly who this question should go to. If you message the coordinator, they should, if it's a clerkship question, or they'll maybe just forward it to the program director, and the program director will do it. But the program coordinator, clerkship coordinator is usually who I say is like kind of your lead or point person for most of these questions. They can filter it out or get it to who ultimately needs to hear it.
It sounds silly, but don't underestimate the power of the program coordinator. It's not someone you want to annoy. It's not someone that you want to be difficult with, because we all know that program managers, program coordinators are the people that really run our programs. And if they say that they have veto power, let me just put it that way.
One small plug, I would say be professional in your email communication, kind of to piggyback off of that. All of what you email to folks is record, right? And that can be forwarded, that can be copied, and you want to be professional, polite, cordial in your emails.
I have a question here. I noticed everyone talked about what to do after you meet the requirements for the program. What about for students that, for example, does not meet the requirements? Like, how can they stand out in that? For example, like if someone has a lesser board score or even not a lot of experience, how would you stand out as a student or applicant? Thank you.
So for our program, we do put something online that says, hey, you should have this score system. Of course, it's going to pass fail. So that's, going to go away with. But I think, again, like you said, just sending an extra email, say, hey, I don't meet the requirements. Can you make an exception? And then being, again, very focused and saying why you're interested. We've done this enough, and we've seen enough students that we can tell when it's disingenuous. We can tell when it's, just like a blanket statement or just, so that's the biggest advice I can give is just emailing and saying, look, I didn't get the chance. I didn't get the opportunity, but I heard from so-and-so about your program. I talked to so-and-so at this conference, and I'm really interested. We've taken a lot of students for rotation that maybe didn't meet the requirements, but expressed extra interest and seemed very genuine and knew about our program. And so it's worth a try. It's just an email. It can't hurt you.
Yeah. I think if there is something, and you guys are going to hear about this likely, or if as you're Googling it with different resources like red flags on an application, if you have something like, hey, you didn't do that great on boards, or you didn't pass boards the first time, or you had a failure in your preclinicals, you can always email, you can always add things in your personal statement. But I don't want to hear reasons. I want to hear the growth from it. So I'm like, I get it. Your dog was throwing up all night right before step one. Fine. But the answer to the question is, hey, I noticed that something happened with step one. Can you tell me about it? Yeah, I didn't perform as well as I did, but here's how I grew and how I learned from it. That's how you address this, by saying, hey, this was not great. And I tried to use it as an opportunity for growth. And here I am now trying to apply myself to be a member of your residency.
I 100% agree with that statement. And I think it speaks to that emotional maturity that we've all been talking about, right? Because we're all human. We don't always all have good days. We have bad ones too, but it's like Dr. Comp was saying, it's how do you like, what do you gain from that experience? How do you move forward? How do you try to not do the same thing again? But even if it does happen, right? But how do you move forward from this experience? I think that's the most important part, that you can, that's a very positive way in which you can package yourself and explain something that maybe is like, man, a little bit subpar, if we're honest, but it's how you package it, right? Because we've talked a lot about what are we looking for. So I want you guys to start thinking about like, okay, so if I was in their shoes, what would I be looking for? So these are the things. All right.
That's a really great question too. Yeah.
One other thing I'll add is if you can do a rotation at that location, request to do kind of an audition for a month, like one of your waves. Some people look a little rough on paper and are phenomenal in person. So it's sometimes difficult to represent yourself in the way that the program requires or requests. And it's more difficult for certain folks, especially if you haven't grown up here in the US, or you're kind of not a traditional student. And sometimes just meeting those people can change the perspective of that program.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that. I think one of the biggest, takeaways or pieces of advice I give students now that, step one's going past balance, kind of changing up the way that we evaluate and, rank students for matching residency is, that in-person time that you get on an audition or away rotation is weighted even more heavily. It's always probably been the most important aspect of it, including the SLOE. I would, again, that's my opinion, but I think probably one of the most important parts of it, but it just gets even weighted heavier. So if you can get that in-person, opportunity at a program, I think that is absolutely huge. And I think if you're, most programs that I'm aware of don't have specific requirements for rotating in their through their audition rotation. Obviously, there are certain numbers, et cetera, that are used to kind of stratify the students and rank them. But if you get put on a wait list or denied and you really, really want to go there and have a good reason, as has been stated previously, like, I'm from here, my family's from here, something like that, that's regionally tied or a good reason, I don't think it hurts to reach out and ask for it, because I do think that audition rotation and that in-person interaction, like Phil was saying, is probably one of the most important things, especially if you're at a disadvantage in other aspects of your application, like say your board scores or whatnot.
And if you don't get a core rotation somewhere, think about other rotations they might have, like ultrasound or talks or something where you still can get FaceTime with the people there.
I think that's about as good of a segue as we're going to get. So the next question would be, so the students that have rotated that you have written excellent SLOEs for, what do they have in common? What do they do?
The best students that I've worked with have follow through. When you're taught medicine in medical school, you're taught to give a really incredible flowy history, physical exam, maybe give a differential, but not really talk about a workup, and definitely not really talk about what to do with new information when it's given to you. Emergency medicine is very unique in that we have an entire patient interaction in our ED. So the med students that really shine out to me and not really knock me off my chair are the ones that say, hey, here's my history physical, here's what I'd like to do. Even if you're wrong, that at least gives me an idea that you're able to say, hey, I'd like to just try. And then when you come back to me in an hour and you say, hey, Dr. Comp, I went and took a look at the patient again. They're still having abdominal pain. Their ultrasound comes back. I'm concerned for choledocho. I'd like to talk to surgery. You don't need to know that, but the fact that I know that you went and looked at the labs, I know you went and reevaluated the patient, and you are working on trying to figure out a disposition, that puts you head and shoulders over a lot of other medical students who you're trained like this in medical school to just do the first half and not complete that full circle. So those are the ones that really, really, really stand out to me.
I agree. And I think a simple thing going off of that is like, going off of that idea of following up is, for example, like one example that come to mind recently with a med student was that the lab was backed up and we couldn't figure out what happened to the urine. And I forgot about it because I was carrying a couple patients at the time. but they called the lab and tracked it down and said, hey, it's in the lab. I'm like, oh, wow, that was really helpful. Thank you so much. Right. Because it's not about, for you as a student, it's not about how many patients you're carrying, look how much I can do. Right. But it's about helping us with our flow and being involved and taking ownership of your patient. That's what's going to set you leaps and bounds ahead, and can like demonstrate to us that you're functioning like basically at an intern level.
Those are definitely great suggestions on how to make positives. Be careful not to make negatives too. Don't be late. Don't try and skate out early. We're looking for people we want to work with, and we don't want people to come in to shift 15 minutes late or say, hey, I got to leave 2 hours early today because I've got something planned. So also be careful of the negatives.
Yeah, I think a good way to think about this is if you rotate somewhere, this is an interview, right? And it's a month-long interview. So everything that you do on that rotation reflects who you are as a candidate. So things that I personally look for, and I remember looking for in our resident matches, were people that were kind of intentional or humble on shift, had good sense of humor, interfaced with the residents, were not necessarily the smartest, truthfully, but were the easiest learners. We took one of our residents a couple of years ago, explicitly had one of the lowest board scores in the entire med school class, but when he showed up and talked to you, he would soak everything like a sponge, ask amazing questions, followed through with everything. He was the kindest person to our patients. He was just a good dude. And then he matched here and got every award. So what you do on your rotation really, really matters. And so just remember that it's a daily interview.
And just to kind of segue off that, I think we've talked about like that EQ over IQ is definitely it. And then the audition portion of it is in all aspects. Again, kind of just echoing what's been said, but that means nurses, that means program leadership that isn't, like the program coordinator, the clerkship coordinator, anyone that you have interaction with. I can tell you several times where I've been approached by someone and said, I had a bad interaction with that medical student. There's no quicker way to torpedo your chances of getting into a program than having someone come up to like the clerkship director or program director and say, I didn't like that guy. He was, inappropriate or whatever it is. And that can go, a lot of times. And again, this is why I think it's such a difficult kind of feedback to give, as far as we want you to be, invested and present, but it's oftentimes like the over boisterous individuals that can sometimes get that negative feedback. So it's kind of a fine line that I don't actually understand where it is. Being somewhat introverted myself, I find I had a hard time with it as well. So it's, again, there's no right answer to it, but it's making sure that you're professional at all times and that you realize that your interactions with everyone can actually play a factor in your, matching at a program. So professionalism, consideration, and that kind of introspection and emotional intelligence, I would say, is much greater than actual IQ, at least when I weight the students.
And this is a little bit of a negative phrasing of what Dr. Whiting said earlier. We all have really powerful programs here in Arizona. I'm really proud for mine to be counted along these other incredible programs. We can teach you guys how to be an emergency medicine doctor. I can't teach you to not be weird by the time you're like in your late 20s, early 30s, right? So I think Dr. Whiting has a much more elegant way of saying it, but that is absolutely what I'm sure we are all looking for. We're looking for the humble, friendly, caring person that's ready and excited to learn.
Okay, so again, my name is Mallory. So I wanted to interject in here. So I have a unique experience where I was a residency program coordinator for a brief period of time. I helped start a family medicine residency program back in California. And I wanted to completely confirm the fact that if you guys are rude or mean or unprofessional with a program coordinator, we immediately go to our PD and say, not this one, and you are axed. Like, it's done. So even if you don't know who the program director is or program coordinator is, if you're coming in to do an interview, just assume anyone who's talking to you has something to do with the program, because as the program coordinator for a new program, some people saw me and I am a short, young looking female and automatically wrote me off, or they came in for their interviews and walked right past me. But that stuff gets noticed as the coordinator and it automatically gets reported back to your program directors. So I just wanted to interject, as someone who has a unique experience working as a program director or program coordinator, that they're totally right. Like, it's not a good thing to do.
That's such an incredible perspective. Anyone that you interact with, assume that they have a decision about whether or not you stay or go. That's incredible. That's the best way that I've heard that being said before. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to say thank you for your service.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. So this next question, bear with me, is a little bit long, but it's something that for our DO colleagues that I'm sure many of us are curious about. So with step 1 and level 1 both being pass fail now, what is your program looking to require in order to secure an audition? For example, I know that some programs still look for step 1 in order to audition with them. And given that basically the weighting of COMLEX and step are equivalent now, with them both being pass fail, are you guys still going to require step 1, or is one versus the other going to be okay?
This is something our programs actually talked about a lot. So we're Kingman and we were predominantly DO and we're, the ACGME merger now, but we kind of talked about the factors we'd be looking at now. So proximity, right? Like, are you from the area? Do you want to be in the area? And then the other parts of, do they know a little bit about our program? What are they interested in? Are they showing that they're going to be a good fit or want to be here? But we haven't gotten much past that. It's kind of difficult. And so we look to our governing boards, right, like CORD and ACEP, for their recommendations on this. And I haven't seen a ton yet on like what to do when there's no scoring system, because when you're getting applications and things like that, you've got to start somewhere. And so historically, it's always been by like a board score number and things like that. So I'm interested actually to hear what the other programs have to say too.
Specific to the COMLEX, we haven't made a final decision yet. We're having a brainstorming session with our core faculty coming up here in about a week to talk about this upcoming interview season. But historically, we've always wanted a USMLE score to compare apples to apples. Now with pass-fail, it's going to be really not all that different. And we realize that there's a very significant cost issue and study and stress issue with having to take 2 exams. So we may be moving away from that requirement, and it'll be on our website when we make the final decision. But it's definitely something a little in flux with us too.
And then talking from our position at COPA, very similar. We've always recommended that you do the USMLE as well for apples to apples. And my recommendation until we get a change in step 2 is to continue to do it for students, because until step 2 becomes pass fail, I still recommend that you do USMLE step 1, even though it is pass fail, so that you can bridge that to get a step 2 USMLE score, because a lot of programs are going to continue to use that USMLE step 2 score in their residency rank list. So it may not be necessary, say, for a clerkship application to get an audition rotation, but I still recommend that you do it because that way you can take step 2 and get the step 2 score. Until they've changed step 2 to be pass fail as well, I think that's going to continue to be the recommendation. Once they change step 2 to pass fail, then I think it becomes just take one or the other, because now we don't have that apples to apples comparison. As long as you pass it, you're good. But until that is until that's real, I recommend that you keep taking it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, not unfortunately, I mean, it's great that step is going to pass, but now we only have the one number, right? We're only going to have step or level 2. And even though we know that we can compare them, it's going to be a much different experience, right? I think your more clinical step or COMLEX or level scores are going to matter a little bit more.
Cool. So that was the prepared questions. We have a little bit more time before we break out into program-specific breakout rooms. So I'd like to open the floor to any students joining right here or online. If you have any other questions for the big group. Anybody online? If you just want to unmute yourself, go right ahead.
Yeah, and if there are no other questions, we can take a little break before the breakout sessions. That's totally.
Speak now.
Hi, my name is Melinda. I had a quick question to piggyback off the last question. With the ability to take step 2 without taking step 1, do you guys still feel that having step 1 is an important bridging, or do you really just think having the step 2 so you have that score is important?
I think it's just having the score, to be honest with you. I don't think actually having passed step 1, like, I mean, if you fail it, that's obviously not good. So, past that, but because we don't have a score or any way to compare, I think essentially we just see that you passed it and then we set it aside when it comes to that portion. Now, step 2 being the scored step, now I think that does, as Dr. Comp was saying, it carries a little more weight, and it's definitely still going to be used by programs until it goes past fails.
Thank you.
On a similar note, sorry, my name is Amelia. On a similar note, for this upcoming cycle where some people do have scored step 1s and then some people have passes, do you know how you'll be comparing those?
I think silence answers your question.
No, the answer is no.
There's a question in the chat. Do you have advice in terms of which elective rotations to do prior to applying to residency aside from EM, ICU, anesthesia? I can answer that in terms of, from my perspective, there's a couple that I find incredibly valuable. If your hospital or your medical school has any sort of radiology, EKG experience, ultrasound, things like that, where those will be really helpful to your education. And if you've satisfied all of your residency electives, go travel, go do stuff before starting residency. Don't stress about doing extra non-required things. Live your life a little bit before you start residency.
So we had an extraordinary and a really hard question here about, since we have people that have passed and have a score, how are you going to compare them? We're going to compare them based on who they are and not on their score. And I think that's the best way for me to answer the question. I'm going to be honest. I mean, I haven't been doing this for a long time, but even when I was a resident and I was helping with selection, I truly can't remember a time where I was down to 2 and I said, well, this one got 10 points more, let's take them. I think that for most residencies, especially in emergency medicine, we're picking the person, not the number on a paper. I know that's not helpful and it doesn't totally answer the question, but I think that's really all we have, because we're kind of all flying by the seat of our pants.
Just to kind of piggyback off of that, what Dr. Comp was saying, I think that no one really knows the right answer. I think it will not hurt you once you get an interview, to be quite honest. As Jeff was saying, like, we don't, oh, this person scored higher by 1 point on step 1, so we're going to bump them up a step or a level, in our rank list. That's just not exactly how it works. I think if you look at getting interview invites and perhaps selections for audition rotations, there might be some, because there are, algorithms that people have been using, including myself, that have numbers and stuff like that baked into them for the selection process. So that being said, I think most programs are aware that there is that disparity, and we'll try to have like a more holistic being like the very key word for any person that's selecting residents. We have a holistic approach to it now. So something to be aware of, but I wouldn't worry too much about it, to be quite honest. I think while we don't have a good answer, everyone's aware of it.
And you can set up filters in ARIS so that you could set a USMLE score and filter out people that were below something like that. I think more and more EM programs have moved away from doing that kind of thing and are again looking at the application as a whole. So I don't think it's going to impact us tremendously.
Once again, this Dr. Comp brought this up at the beginning, but if you haven't checked out that website, EMRA Match is a fantastic source. I used it a lot when I was searching for like away rotations. You can sort by percentage of DO students. You can sort by, is there a step 1 cutoff? You can sort by a lot of factors. It's a tremendous website. Or you can see if there's fellowships at certain sites. So as you're thinking about rotations, thinking about 4th year or in 4th year, definitely check that out. We do have a question in person that I want to make sure that we get to, so go for it.
Okay, so my name's Michelle. I've heard you guys talk about a lot about like leadership and emotional maturity as things you look for, but how heavily do you weigh research in your decision process?
Oh my gosh, I hate research so much, but it is an ACGME requirement for most programs that there's some degree of research. And so I think if that's your interest, you should look for programs that offer that. Our program in Kingman offers that, like even to students and residents who aren't a part of our program, right? And so if that's your interest, go for it. I don't think we force it upon any of our residents more than what ACGME requires, right? But if it's your interest, it should be fostered. But I hate it.
Can I just say, I think research is, sorry, okay, out there, Jeff. Research will never be looked down upon. I've had several students like, oh, do you think they'll like negatively look at me because they published all these things? I'm like, what? That's not even a question. It'll never be a negative thing on your application. And it can be a very positive thing, I think, depending on where you're going. And it's kind of been stated before, like knowing what you're looking for in your training and what you're interested in your career, I think is also very important. So like, if you come to COPA and you're like, I am really super into research, that's perhaps not a strength there. Again, we're going to negatively impact you, but it won't have the positive impact that it may have somewhere that is very pro research, so something to just be aware of.
And unlike some other specialties, I don't think do it just because you can put it on your application and do it. There are some other specialties where you pretty much need research in order to get looked at. I would say sometimes it goes to the commitment thing I was talking about before. So if you hooked up with someone after your first year of med school over the summer and started doing some research with them, and now you've done projects with them over 3 years, they're going to be able to give you a really solid non-SLOE letter of recommendation. And that letter to me saying, I worked with this guy for 3 years and he was phenomenally followed through on everything means quite a bit. I worked with this guy for 2 weeks during his selective time and he entered data for me for a project. Really doesn't matter to me.
I think I want to give just a little bit of, I guess, like advice when it comes to research, right? I remember when I was a med student, I really classically said, no, I have to have a PMID indexed, like multi-center randomized controlled study. And if that's your thing, that's great. But just to echo what Dr. Fiorello is saying, if you were the 15th author on a 30 author paper and you counted fly eye color, I don't really care. But if you wrote an article about an interest that you have and put it in EM Resident or in one of our other like EM trade, like different magazines or articles, or working with your mentor and saying, hey, I'd like to work on a blog post or a Twitter post, not really a Twitter post, or a blog or a podcast. That's all stuff, the digital innovations and the digital content, add that stuff to your CV. Right. And that's going to be the stuff that I'm looking for. And I'm going to be able to say, and it holds more weight for me when I see someone that says, hey, we worked together and wrote an article for EM Resident on bite stings and envenomations. Right. And that's really cool. And it's in EM Resident. It's not PMID indexed, but it shows, one, that there's dedication to emergency medicine, and it allows you to connect with a mentor within the specialty. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about where to put your time. There are very few of us that are going to say, nope, it's not PubMed indexed. I really don't care, because digital scholarship is kind of where the specialty is moving to anyway.
There's a question in the chat about the oSLOE, and I'm curious to see what other people think about it. I thought it had some potential usefulness in its development. In reality, I don't know how useful they were, because I don't think people really followed the guidelines like we do when we do the emergency medicine SLOEs. Not everyone is top 10%, but somehow magically on the oSLOE, everyone's top 10%.
So I think the question
I
is,
feel like,
is it
sorry.
preferred to have a narrative letter over that, or is the oSLOE a good placeholder for a narrative letter? Sorry, just to.
I would like, I can't really speak to that, but I was just going to kind of mirror what Dr. Fiorelli was saying. Is that, yeah, it's interesting because the standardization of the SLOE, the eSLOE, not the oSLOE, is the fact that you have a program that, you know, churns out 20, 30 students a year, and that's kind of how we standardize what it is as far as the evaluation. Where the oSLOE, you have someone on off-service rotation that, you know, maybe sees 2 or 3 students that goes through, and then that's how you get, you know, top 10% for every one of those students. Again, I'm not 100% sure, at not being a program director, how they're weighted. My suspicion is that they would be weighted a little better than a narrative letter, but again, that totally depends on who the letter is coming from. So a narrative letter from, you know, someone that's well known in the program that you're going to, say in a different off-service specialty, may actually carry more weight than an oSLOE from, you know, somewhere else.
And the longitudinal nature of the relationship, I think, sometimes may be better in a narrative. So if you did have a relationship with someone over years, a narrative letter may be better because you could explain that. But the oSLOE does have a little more objectivity to it, and that's kind of what we were looking for. There is a narrative part of the oSLOE where people can put comments. You can't tell your letter writer how to write their letter, but the narrative part of the oSLOE I have found useful sometimes.
Excellent. Well, I think at this point we will conclude this part of the conference. Thanks to all the PDs and the APDs for answering all the questions there. We're going to take a little break. The next thing is the program specific one.